The world needs all of us, whether we have special titles or not, whether you ever run for office. Les, I want the people who are listening to us today or tonight or whatever time zone they're in to know that they deserve so much better than what they're getting, and that the promise of what can be better, life, liberty, and everybody's pursuit of happiness can be had. But the only way that it is had is that we need conscious minded people from all walks of life to stand up and unite based on a vision for a better future for all of us. And that's why Sister Turner is fighting this fight.
Hello, Nina, can you hear me? Oh, I think you're on mute.
I can, Lance, I can hear you.
Hello, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. I was listening to you talk about smoked paprika and stuff.
Yeah, I was just reading chat.
I like smoked paprika though, I do.
Oh, me too, yeah. And that mixed with garlic sounds absolutely delicious. I could not desire something more. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show for the very first time. I wanted to start by asking, what exactly made you switch from supporting Hillary Clinton to Bernie Sanders? Was it the Pokemon go to the polls question?
It was, I hadn't quite made up my mind. I probably most likely if Senator Sanders hadn't been on that race, followed the path of least resistance, I didn't officially hadn't endorsed. The only person I endorsed in that race was Senator Sanders, but I certainly have been to some Ready for Hillary events, no doubt about that. But what made me endorse the senator was his bold approaches. Two things in particular was the cancellation of student debt and Medicare for all. For me, Medicare for all, my mother died at a very young age. She was only 42 years old when she died, brain aneurysm. And throughout her life, my parents were very working class. My dad is still here, working poor rather. And, throughout her life, she was underinsured and uninsured most of her life. And, but for Medicaid, it was just some really tumultuous times. And when she wasn't gainfully employed, then she had to try to apply to be back on the system. So when the senator was talking about having universal health care in this country, that pierced me in a personal way, knowing that there were millions of other people in the world just like my mother who I miss every single day. And then I'm a first generation college graduate, Lance. That was a no-brainer. College for all. Why should people be saddled with debt? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to walk across the stage with a degree in one hand and debt in the other, just for the crime, air quotes, of going to college and trying to better yourself. This should be a social contract that we have in this country. And a lot of older people talk about how it didn't cost as much when they were there. I know even Senator Warren had put out a tweet about $50 a semester, I think she said, or a quarter, but it was very reasonable. It was to low cost to no cost almost. And that is how it is right now in every single industrialized nation but the United States of America. So I was just really compelled by the senator's boldness, and there was really no choice for me because my consciousness convicted me, and that was it. I was done. Senator Sanders, my candidate, and we've been rocking ever since the latter part of 2015.
When it comes to student debt cancellation, what do you say to the criticisms that it may impact like wealthier Americans or Americans who have already had the means to be able to go to college, even if they had to take out a debt to get there? That seems to be a common criticism I hear in pushback for that.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous criticism. I don't hear them saying that when it came time to bail out Wall Street. But every time we talk about putting a down payment on Main Street or in the hoods where people are misunderstood, whether it's rural hoods, urban hoods, or suburban hoods, they always want to make an excuse. Ultra wealthy people do not have student debt. So the people that it is going to impact the most are the 45 million people who actually went to college, and or even were ripped off by some of those technical schools that didn't work. Some of them worked, but most of them did not. And so we got people saddled with debt, and we need to do something about it and stop playing games. We can do this. We're a hegemon nation. Let's do this. And while we're at it, Lance, not only should we cancel student debt, so the criticism is ridiculous on its face. I'm gonna put that right there. But we also have to change the system so that there's not another generation. It's one thing to cancel student debt, but what are we going to do systemically to make sure that student debt of this magnitude is a thing of the past? So we got to do both of those things. But a great start, cancel student debt.
And are you advocating for that through executive action?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, the Education Act of 1965, the same authority that this president, and also the former president had to place a moratorium on that student debt is the same authority that this president has to cancel it flat out. Don't mess around with Congress, because Congress, you got recalcitrant Republicans. Well, you got Republicans who have lost their ever loving minds, and then you got some Democrats playing games. Do not wait on them. Do it by executive order and do it right now. The president can do that, and he would give relief to so many people. They would get disposable income, and God knows they need it with this inflation and all this predatory capitalism that's going on right now, from gas prices to food prices. People could use that.
When it comes to, the discussion around gas prices, food prices, and inflation, I often see people pointing towards not blaming corporate greed and saying that this has a lot to do with either, the war in Ukraine for gas prices, or when it comes to the inflation just for general food prices, that has to do with a myriad of factors. But why do you think that is, that people don't actually go after the corporations themselves who are the ones increasing the prices?
Because you got the mainstream media, and then you have certain politicians not telling this part of the story. And thank God for people like former Labor Secretary Robert Reich. Dr. Reich, he lays it down. He puts out that, he makes it, talking about economics, so simple for the everyday layperson. What we do know is that oil industry, and let me take them for the example, increase the cost that we pay at the pump, even though the cost per barrel did not really go up at all. It's very minuscule. So in other words, they're raising prices well beyond the cost of doing business. And what that is called, in an inflationary moment on top of a pandemic that we may think we're through with because we're wearing masks a little less, or we're not as stringent on the mask wearing. But pandemic ain't done with us. We might be done with it, but it's not done with us. So when the layering impact of the pressures that people are feeling is coming from corporate greed. Why is it that the billionaire class has made almost $2 trillion over the last 2 years? But meanwhile, again, in the hoods where people are misunderstood, we can't get the minimum wage increased, which we know that if it kept up with inflation, it'd be closer to $25. Here we are trying to fight for $15. We can't even get that. So we need to put the blame where it belongs. And well before the war started in the Ukraine, and shame on Putin, but well before that war started, you had corporations, not just the oil industry, all these other industries raising up their prices well beyond what they need to make a profit. Now I get it, Lance. People want to make a profit. I got it, but do you got to make the profit off of the backs and livelihoods and lives of people? No, you do not. That is a choice, and that is why we need government to be the referee and to call the fouls. So I'm calling foul on these mega corporations that are raising their rates and really making it harder for people to live. And look at rents, Lance. People can hardly afford their rents. They're going up so high. So you got rent, you got eggs, you got milk, you got gas. How do they expect people to live? Well, they really don't expect people to live. And if you are an American oligarch, most likely you don't give a damn whether people live or die, obviously. And that's why we need some people in elected office who actually do and will hold these corporations accountable.
Okay, so I love hearing you use the word oligarch in reference to American billionaires, but I know that's very controversial, and obviously this is an echo chamber because this is a progressive show.
Yeah.
But what
But
do you
Lance,
feel?
why is it controversial?
I don't
Why
know.
is it controversial?
I don't know. It's totally fine calling Russian billionaires who exploit people
Right.
oligarchs, but if it's America, well, that's then it's something completely different.
But you know what Shakespeare said? He said, "What's in the name? A rose by any other name smells just as sweet." But right now, we're talking about thorns. And that's what these people are. They're thorns in the side of the American people. People who are trying to survive every single day. Like, Maslow hierarchy of need. Nope. Very few people are going to get to self-actualization as long as they down there at the bottom of the pyramid.
True.
Trying to take care of their physiological needs, their safety needs, their housing needs. And if these people, they're unpatriotic, Lance. That's what they are. They're unpatriotic, and they're oligarchs. They're just American oligarchs. What's wrong with it?
Yeah, no, I'm all about it. I wanted to ask. So there's obviously some criticism that comes into. There's a difference between the corporate Democrats and we don't need to name names, and the new progressive wing that's coming in and trying to shake things up, so to speak. People often criticize the squad, or however you want to say, as not being politically effective. So then why should we concentrate on getting these kind of people elected or putting hours into it? What would you say to that or push back against that?
Because people like that are the best chance we got. Most of the people in that Congress are neoliberals, unfortunately. And you don't have to agree all the time 100% with the person to have a relationship. If that's what you want, then you got to run for office yourself, because you're never going to get 100%. But what I do know, especially about the members of the squad, they have courage that certain of the others do not have. And let's look at the BIF, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and Build Back Better as two very recent examples. They held out. They were the only ones with the courage, and they were not holding out for less. They weren't holding out because they didn't want the bipartisan infrastructure bill. They were holding out for more. They had the courage to ask for more, and they knew that if those two things were decoupled, that we were going to be right where we are right now, which is who is even talking about Build Back Better anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And so I know that there's some frustration out there, and I get it. I get it. But we cannot, in my opinion, we cannot opt out of electoral politics, because that's really what the other side wants. They want people like us to get so weary and well doing that we just throw up our hands and we don't participate and we give up, so that then they can have the space all to themselves. Well, we can't let them have it all to themselves. Look at what is happening under their leadership. Minimum wage is not going up. People are suffering more now. Generation Z or millennials don't expect to live a better life than their parents and or their grandparents at this rate. Mother Earth is going to outlast us all. Liz, I had an environmental activist say, you know what, Senator, look, we need to save Mother Earth because we need to save ourselves, because guess what? She going to outlive us. She going to be all right. We're the ones that's not going to be all right. And I thought that was a fantastic point, because she's been here
It's
for
true.
hundreds of thousands of years. So she gonna be all right. It's us and the animal life and the plant life, the entire ecosystem that depends on us, people like us, human beings, to get it right. And so we need more people who are going to be willing to have the courage of their convictions, even if people get frustrated at times. It's called life. You're gonna
Mm-hmm.
agree, sometimes not disagree, but you can measure people out there. They know who the real progressives are, and real, air quotes, does not necessarily mean they're gonna do everything you want, but they are the best chance that we have. And that's why I'm rocking. I rock with the freedom fighting progressives,
When it comes
not the
to
pinos.
yeah, when it comes
Not the
to
pinos.
when it comes to saving Mother Earth, the idea of, like you mentioned, Zoomers and millennials and younger generations obviously getting really, really scared about the future and the climate. And I know the biggest thing that progressives are bringing forward is things like the Green New Deal, for example. What do you say to people who are they see a kind of a deadlock where the Democrats acknowledge climate change exists, but they're not really taking any serious measures to, change course, and Republicans just flat out are willing to ignore it until it's the worst case scenario?
Yeah, I encourage everybody to watch the movie Don't Look Up. That tells it all. What I said, we just gotta keep pushing. There is gonna come a time, and this is not something that we can take on just as a nation only. We need a worldwide effort to save mother, not to save Mother, to save ourselves, because of the damage that we are doing to Mother, have done, and are continue to do. There are all kinds of things we could do. I'm very encouraged. Like, there's a local councilman in Lakewood. His name is Tristan Rader, for example, and he's pushing through solar panels in his city. I give, and other things. I give that as an example to say, while we continue to fight to get the feds to do what needs to happen, because that's the biggest stick and it'll have the biggest impact, don't get so discouraged that we don't see other opportunities on the state, regional, and local levels of government. There is going to be a reckoning. It's coming. And we know that the UN scientists just put out a report, what, about 2, 3 weeks ago, letting us know we ain't got a whole bunch of time to get it together. So we have to push in multiple areas at the same time. And we should be mad as hell about what is happening on the federal level, because not enough is happening. But we got to use that anger and push it towards action at the same time. Let's embrace those local elected officials and regional elected officials who are doing their part on their levels of government, so that we're building that strong foundation as we continue to put pressure on the feds, on the federal government, the Congress, and the president.
For something like Medicare for all, which obviously I think everyone broadly supports in terms of the left, and even people on the other side of the aisle support it in some form or another. If it's not possible to achieve on the federal level, do you think that's something that you could work on a state level to get, like just for Ohio or other states to do the same thing?
Absolutely. California had two votes, so far within the last 10 years. And And I still think the great state of California is going to come through. And we look at Canada as just one model. As I said, every industrialized nation has some form of universal health care but us. But it started in Canada, I think in the province of Saskatchewan. It didn't start
Yeah, that's where
in
my mom's from.
Canada, the nation. Yeah. Oh, is that where your mom? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm preaching to the choir. So again, as we continue to put the pressure, like we shouldn't give up. This is not an either or. This is a both. Continue to bring that heat. Bring the heat. We're coming in hot. Bring the heat on the federal level, pushing federally elected officials to do what is right, just, and good. But yes, also support those efforts on the state level. It's going to be California. I think it's going to be California first, but in either case, whichever state does it, they're going to set a really strong foundation for the rest of the country to have it. And when you would think in the midst of a pandemic, so many people died, their deaths could have been avoided if they had universal health care. Not all, but many could have. And you would think that in the midst of the pandemic, if there was ever a time to go bold, to go big, to see the promise in the problem that we have a global pandemic, the promise is we could use public policy to do something about it. Lance, this was the time. This is still the moment to do it right now. Let's just go ahead and have universal health care. People need it. They want it too, because we know most of the polls show that the majority of the American people, no matter how they identify politically, they want the minimum wage to be increased. They want universal health care. They want marijuana legalized for recreational, all the things that the freedom fighting progressives are fighting for. The American people are right where we are. They might not necessarily label themselves as progressives, but when you talk to them about the issue, each individual issue, they right there with us. And you know why? Because they catching hell.
Yeah, true. When it comes to the fight for 15, is that something that could also be achieved on the state level, or do you think it's something that you're going to be working for and pushing for to go? Like, I know it hasn't changed since 725. I think it's been that for like the past 20
That's
plus years. So how
that's
exactly
true.
can you transform that either on a state or a federal level?
A lot of states and local municipalities have already done it, and that is beautiful. So we got to, again, just like dealing with the climate, we got to do that too, both on the local, regional, state level, and then the federal level as well. We had a very big opportunity to do that. As you know, they blamed it on the parliamentarian. We should have done it, but the mansion and cinemas of the world, standing in the way, and the other Democrats, a few of them hiding behind mansion and cinema, is they block that. So we got to keep pushing. There's some elections come, so certainly elections this year, next year, the year after that. We got to make sure that there's a consequence. See, that's what I want the voters all over this country, the majority of us who are in the working class, because baby, unless you got a sugar daddy or sugar mama, you work for a living. That's it. And some of us may be blessed to be in the upper echelons of that salary category, but very few of us could afford to absolutely not work at all. So we got to be all in this together. And so there needs to be some consequences for those elected officials who are not there to serve the people. They only there to serve their owner donors. And that's why they pushing so hard against me, Lance, because they know I'm gonna stand up and speak a type of truth that's gonna shake this joint. And I want the sleeping giants to wake up. The American people deserve better than what they're getting. Minimum wage must be increased. People need a living wage. One job should be enough. At least one and a half jobs, Lance. Why do people got to work two and three jobs to make ends meet? Unless they want to do that for recreational purposes. But this is a must right now. And so that is a prime example that people's quality of life is not intact. Mental health challenges up. This pandemic, the weight of it. And then when you go to the pump, if you're in Ohio, you're paying $4.25. And if you West, you paying $7, $6 a gallon. And when we know the national minimum wage is $7.25, are you kidding me? So we need some boldness popping. We need some people popping and making sure that there's a consequence for these elected officials not serving the people.
I guess one of the last things I want to ask you when it comes to serving the people is that your friend and a handful of other people have been, let's just say, having little disputes on the Bird app, the Twitter, with the new overlord of the social media. I was just curious what your thoughts are on the free speech debate surrounding social media, and if there's anything government should do involving that.
Yeah, regulate, regulate, regulate. I think it was Dr. Robert Rice who put it best, saying that this is not a free speech debate. Look at who owns most of the either print media or TV media. It's the oligarchs. So speech ain't that free. because it's concentrated in the hands of very few people. And if we think very deeply about the internet itself, like these platforms use the World Wide Web. Do you know who paid for the World Wide Web to be? We did, taxpayers. It's a public utility and it should be treated as such. And that is why somebody like Elon Musk should not have been able to buy Twitter for $44 billion. That's it. I mean, you got Bezos, he owns the Washington Post. I mean, we can go on and on. How free is the speech? Because at some point there is a collision between the priorities of those people and the priorities of free speech. And if the very platform that we use, whether it's social media or the fourth estate, which is supposed to be the newspapers, but people can only talk about what they deem proper to talk about, that's not free speech at all. So now we're going to let the oligarchs control the World Wide Web and all the platforms that are on it. It's wrong. So we must regulate. We got to break up these tech industry. Break them up, baby. Break them up. We got to go back to, trust busting. We got to do that. Lance, I tell you, I'm saying this to the people, and I don't want folks to be discouraged, but we got a fight on our hands, and we just need to go on and understand that justice is never a final destination. It is always a journey that is passed on from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. And so we have to reconcile ourselves to do what we can, where we are, what we have in this moment, until it's time to pass the baton to the next set of freedom fighters. It's never going to end. So that's what I need us to understand right now. Evil never sleeps, so good can never take a vacation. Ain't no vacation when you're on justice journey. You can't take
True.
off.
Well, speaking of helping the fight, how can people get involved in the campaign? I know it's getting really close to May 3rd. How can they canvass, donate, support? What can people do if they want to help?
Yeah, go to ninaturner.com. We need time, talent, and treasure. If you do not live here and if you cannot vote here, you can still participate by donating $5, $10, $27, whatever you can afford. And if you want to volunteer, you can volunteer from wherever you are. Go to ninaturner.com/volunteer, and we can put you on phone banks. Really need the help because the oligarchs have definitely entered this race. And I wonder why you would have a crypto billionaire drop $1 million into this race. Inquiring minds want to know. And while you would have an oil baroness drop money into a dark money groups or super PAC, and they're spending a million of the 2 million right here in this race in Greater Cleveland, the 11th congressional district. Inquiring minds want to know. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that there is a stark difference between me and the person that's running against me, which is I am unbought and unbossed, to quote the great Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm. On the other hand, they rented this district last time during the special election, and they're trying to make it for keeps. That's why they in there, because they can control that person, but they know they can't control me. And this is really about a larger movement. The movement, when we talked about, Lance, the Green New Deal or dealing with climate chaos. Well, why you think an oil baroness would drop money down into this? Because the person that I'm running against is a half measure kind of person when it comes to dealing with climate chaos and having a real, true Green Deal. The, Voting the right way is one thing, fighting the right way is another. And that's what Sister Turner is here to do for my district, for my state, and for this nation. So the progressive, freedom fighting progressive movement has a decision to make. Either we're going to let the oligarchs continue to overrun us, or we're going to get in and help candidates that are fighting for what is just, right, and good. So get in there, make a donation. Give me some of your time, your talent, and your treasure. Go to ninaturner.com. We need you. May 3rd is election day. Early voting has already started. We need you. I am not taking super PAC money. I'm not taking money from oil industry, none of that kind of stuff, because I want my only special interest to be the people who I serve. That's my special interest, looking out for the people, Lance. So I need some help from this movement. We can do this. We can win this race.
And can people outside of the U.S. Volunteer? I know they can't donate, but can they
Yeah, they
canvas?
can't donate, but they can, they can volunteer. We got Dems abroad. Let me shout out the Dems abroad, baby. The Dems abroad. Yes, living all over this world, holding it down. But yeah, people can definitely volunteer. So go to ninaturner.com. We need you. This movement needs you. The world needs all of us, whether we have special titles or not, whether you ever run for office. Lance, I want the people who are listening to us today or tonight or whatever time zone they're in to know that they deserve so much better than what they're getting, and that the promise of what can be better, life, liberty, and everybody's pursuit of happiness can be had. But the only way that it is had is that we need conscious-minded people from all walks of life to stand up and unite based on a vision for a better future for all of us. And that's why Sister Turner is fighting this fight.
Thank you so much, Nina Turner. It was an absolute pleasure to speak to you.
Oh, it was a pleasure to be with you, darling, and I hope you'll have me back.
Oh, I would love to. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
Well, that was fun. Happy Sunday, everybody. Super based. I highly recommend every one of you go to ninaturner.com. Go support. Give your time, your dollars if you have them, your doubloons. And maybe if there's any reformed crypto billionaires out there who are like, I did a bad thing. I shouldn't have been a crypto billionaire my whole life. Well, now's your chance. You can turn all that Doge into something good. Go support ninaturner.com. I'm going to be honest. I've interviewed a lot of politicians on this show, and obviously I was warned beforehand that I only had about 25 minutes to talk to Nina Turner. But it is refreshing. I think Nina Turner is the only person who calls billionaires who aren't Russian oligarchs, which is I don't know why that is such a controversial thing, because all of a sudden it's like, well, you have to understand the historical precedents. An oligarch has to be, an individual who has worked in order to assume and control power, usually within like the Russian state and stuff like that. I was like, well, yeah, but I mean, if we're using it as a pejorative, we can. Bernie does. That's true. Bernie does as well. Yeah, Bernie does as well. It was unexpected. I didn't know that I'd be speaking to the great and amazing Nina Turner today. I only found out this morning from the team, because they're obviously in the war room right now and doing all that, like the election's about to happen, so we got to get everything planned. So I was like, okay, well, all right. Yes, I would love, it would be an absolute honor to be able to speak to Nina right before the election. Please, if you are an Americano, if you happen to be an American and you are in Ohio of all places, it's getting really close to May 3rd. Put in some time. Let's defeat Chantel Brown. It would be amazing to have someone who has a vision like Nina to be represented and be a representation of the people. I think that would be a good thing. Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form. Available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback, because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, we are prepared to embark on a mighty jihad in your name. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your humble jester, attempting in vain to get you to laugh. To our valiant knights of the Round Table, Benji Arnie, Tech Tink, Scary Earthhuman, Tony, DM Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Mayred, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood. It doesn't matter what I believe, it only matters what I can prove. Egbert Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Coulter Smith, Jenna Tao, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multimondi, Trevbot, EXE, Brian Ephraim, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojack, Saren 42, Catherine, Ramona Costa, Incosin, Agent NDN, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, La Media Panza, Zach Christensen, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our mugs and salute our brave heroes off to another glorious conquest.